After 5 years of playing my sci-fi LARP character Aelia, who has gone from avoiding tech to fully embracing it and becoming part of the military, I think she's due for a costume change that reflects how far she's come. And what's more important in LARP than comfort and pockets? So today, let's see how much functionality we can sew into a single LARP costume. As I'm not someone who draws patterns from scratch, but rather alters existing ones, it started with searching around for something that could work. For me, the starting point is usually to browse through the stack of pattern magazines I inherited from my grandma. They're all from the early 2000s, which in this case is perfect, as cargo pants were in fashion back then. I found something that could work pretty well as a base. It already had quite a few pockets too. And I decided to also grab the pocket patterns from the very first project I ever made. Okay, small correction. That my grandma made and I helped with. Happy she immediately taught me to save all of the patterns. It makes them really easy to reuse. These patterns were then traced from the magazine and cut from some plain fabric to make a mock-up. Especially with trousers, I do want to make a mock-up first, because they are trickier to adjust if needed. Here we have a very sexy test fit of the very first mock-up. This is pretty much unaltered. I did put on the necessary parts on the back to make it end up the full height. I did not put on the top band because I think that's not going to be necessary. That top band is the part that we're going to elongate to make it look more dungaree-like. Also, this pattern has the closure in the front and I want to keep it there because for reasons that I thought of at some point. What this mock-up also tells me is that it gives me all the movement I need. I can do whatever I want in it. It fits very nicely, it's not too tight, which is perfect for a pair of LARP pants. Again, it's a mock-up, you can ignore the fact that it doesn't have a full length because sure, I trust that. This is the part that is relevant for a mock-up. And now we need to get to the alterations. And for that, I think for now, I'm just going to see how much difference there is between what is the top part of the pants minus the seam allowance and my waist, because I want to have it end here. Which means that right now, I'm probably just gonna add a strip of fabric of 15 centimeters tall, and then we'll see from there. So, two things. First of all, look at it, it's a mirror. It's the first time I'm filming in, well, this new closet setup. As you can see, the closet is still empty because this was built yesterday. Anyway, the second thing is that I put the extra bit of fabric on top of the pants, and yes, this looks weird. It's as intended, because my idea right now is to just put pins in it until it fits. Like I sort of already started doing on the back, but now I have to do that all around and then I can make that fit to me, and when I'm actually sewing it, those will all be darts or maybe even separate pattern pieces. So I am going to make this a bit fit. And there we go, that's how I go from a basic mock-up to high-waisted pants. It's not perfect, I mean, I just put some random pins in it. I also didn't want it to be skin tight because of course I still want to be able to move in it. You know, looking at it with how much is left on the back, I think this might become a separate seam, but again, we'll figure that out once we've got everything on the table again. I took the top band off the pants and I'm actually surprised with how well everything matches up. Nothing differs more than ½ centimeter, which is always really nice. Even the angle, that is the closure at the front, doesn't differ much, it's almost the same angle. I did notice I made one small mistake when sewing the band to the pants. I think I stretched it more on one side than the other, because between the side seam and the back, this is 1 centimeter longer than this side seam in the back. So I measured it against the pattern, and this is the actual measurement. Combine that with the fact that on this side, I think the dart looks a bit weird and wonky. And on this side, the dart actually looks pretty nice. So considering we were already thinking about it anyway, I'm gonna cut it in half here and then we have our pattern piece. I was also thinking, do I want another seam here at the side seam? Because that's also going to be a dart. But as darts, if you make them into a full seam, it will add more fabric with the seam allowances, which means you'll get a lot of fabric bulk here at the bottom. So I think I might not make this into a seam, also because I'm probably gonna do this entire top band 2 layers of fabric for extra sturdiness, which would mean even more fabric bulk, so yeah. And this basically means that we have our pattern and we can start cutting the actual fabric. Because we changed a few things and added some new pieces, it was a bit of a puzzle to fit everything in as efficiently as possible. But in the end, I think it worked out quite well. And while originally these extra pockets had rounded corners, I think I'll go for square ones this time. Should be a bit easier to sew too. So I laid out all the pieces on the table to check how these pants go together, because the construction is quite interesting. For now I only added one extra set of pockets that will go on the top band, and then I realized that apparently even do-it-yourself pants have fake pockets. This is only a pocket flap, not an actual pocket. So I think I'm just gonna cut another simple pocket, because this will be on the back. That will bring the total to 8. I might add another one after that, but we'll see about that. To make it a bit crispier and give certain parts extra sturdiness, I ironed on some interfacing. And to make sewing these curves a bit easier, I also thread traced the crotch seams. This means we can get started with the sewing. First step is the pockets on the back, for which we can start by sewing the back flaps. I haven't used a serger in a while, but for a project like this, it really makes things easier and the pants neater. The pattern instructions now tell me to align these to the mark on the back. But right, pattern magazine patterns. This mark wasn't actually included on the pattern. Oh well, we are already improvising with these pants anyway. The flap is then sandwiched in place by sewing the main part of the back of the pants to the top part of the back of the pants. How I'm actually going to attach this pocket was actually still a puzzle. I'm probably also making this way more difficult than it can be, but hey, this is the way I work. As you can see, the pocket is slightly wider than the pocket flap. That is because, well, we can fold this over and then this will eventually end up smaller. As you might be able to see, I finished the edges, except the corner. That is because if we fold this over, it will end up quite bulky. So by not finishing the corner, I can easily snip this off without unraveling the seam finishes. I did want to finish this seam because even though this fabric doesn't really fray, for pockets where you will be slipping stuff in and out of it, I always do like to finish the edges just to prevent any potential fraying. And the actual attachment will be done by first folding over the seam allowance and then stitching it down on the pants. That way you will end up seeing 2 rows of stitches, and this is what it looks like when the pockets are fully on. We have 2 functional pockets. I must say I have definitely done neater sewing, but I'm already finding out that this is a fabric I'm gonna have a love-hate relationship with. It's gonna be super comfy to wear, it's very nice and soft, but it's also pretty stretchy. So yeah, this is fun to sew. I also top stitched through this just to make sure the flap stays down, and it also looks really nice. But attaching this and putting on the pockets is all that I managed to do in a work week, which actually is really nice because tomorrow I am off to the city to grab the rest of the supplies. I quite like running errands in the city, just hop on my bike and enjoy Amersfoort. No matter how often I come here, it never loses its charm. Unfortunately, the fabric shop didn't have any fabric suited for the top that I also want to make, but for the pants I managed to find everything we need. This pattern comes with zippered pockets in the leg. As usual in this pattern magazine, zippers are a bit of a hassle to figure out, but the idea is pretty funny. A zipper is sewn on an extra piece of fabric on the pant leg, which can be folded double and closed on the bottom to form a zippered pocket. And to make the front of the leg the full length, these 2 parts can be stitched together. This pattern calls for a lot of extra top stitching to keep the seam allowances in place, and I'm quite happy with that. It somehow makes everything look just a bit more professional and neat. Then it is time to start the trouser construction itself. This bit, again, was missing some markings on the pattern, but I think it still managed to align nicely in the end. Because sewing this side seam with the zipper is very finicky, I decided not to use the locker, which was a good decision. There is no way I could have moved the zipper out of the way otherwise. The pattern instructs me to sew the seam allowance to the front pant leg, but with the sturdy zipper in there, that doesn't make sense to me. So screw it, to the back it goes. The next pockets were also more challenging to sew than expected. And that is saying something, because I already expected them to be tricky. Though part of this was to blame on me not understanding the instructions clearly. So I accidentally sewed both sides instead of only one. But after unpicking this, it went relatively smoothly. To make the curve a bit easier, the seam allowance on the pleat was cut down to 1 centimeter. And once again, with curves, you can never have enough pins. Finally, we're ready to attach these pockets to the pants. These pockets are all I've been working on today, and I'm kind of ready to be done with them. For your reference, these are the pant legs. On both of them, the middle front is here, so they're facing each other. I already pinned this pocket to the pants, and I can show you how I did it on this one, because again, this is an interesting bit of construction. The actual construction is quite simple. We have the fabric that will form the pleat to make these pockets nice and tall. And the idea is you can fold this, put it down on the fabric, put a pin in it, and then later on we can stitch this. No issue, this is quite easy until we end up on the side seam. Because if I attach this over the entire length, I cannot fold this over anymore. What I can do is attach it up until where the side seam will fold over, and then later on fold this over in its entirety. However, we will end up with something super bulky. I don't think my sewing machine wants to stitch through this, and honestly, it doesn't look really pretty because you can see it and this will stick out. I don't want to do that. So compared to the pattern instructions, I'm going to do it the other way around. First, fold this over, then sew the entire side seam, and then actually sew this down. It's gonna be tricky, but we'll see about it. And with that, these pockets are finally on. And actually, I quite do like the look of these pleated pockets that just give me a lot of space to store stuff in. And yes, the corners are still very bulky, but at least no raw seam allowances are poking out. And I think because this sticks out anyway, it's not that visible either. So all in all, I'm actually quite happy with them, although it took a bit longer to put them on than I had hoped. And now the pattern instructs me to actually start turning this into actual pants, after which it starts talking about the closure, which means we can finally discard the actual pattern instructions and I can make my own chaos of this. And this is the moment where I'm happy that I thread traced a bit of the crotch seam. It always makes things a lot easier when you can just pin on the marks instead of having to measure a seam allowance around the curve. And with this, they're actually starting to turn into something that resembles pants, after which I had a bit of a think of everything that I want to do with the waistband, as you can see with the giant amount of stuff on the table. First of all, we of course have the general attachment of the waistband to the pants. We need a zipper, there are darts in here. But aside from that, I also want to add yet more pockets. And I want to see if I can attach a system where I can attach my mullet pouches to. And even more so, I want to add shoulder straps that are of course adjustable. So now I have to think about the most logical order of operations for all of this. Because some items I only want to attach to one layer of fabric of the waistband, and some have to go on both layers. The shoulder straps are going in between the layers when we attach the waistband parts together. So those will come at that moment. Aside from that, I think I want to attach the mullet attachment system to both layers for extra strength. And the pockets, I think, might actually be able to go on one layer. I think it makes most sense to start with these, because right now everything is still flat. So after the pockets, we can put in the darts, and after that, we'll see then. Problem for later. Happy I decided to turn these pockets into squares, because that made putting them together very easy. All I did was overlock the edges and stitch them down. And let me tell you a small secret. Apparently I either did not cut them straight or did not overlock them straight, because when I folded everything over with 1.5 centimeter, these edges were quite wonky. The nice thing about having quite a bit of seam allowance, you can cheat with it. This is definitely a lot shorter than there or there. Now all that remains is to fold over the top edge, put them on the waistband and stitch them down. Except that I forgot to think about the closures, so let's do that first. With the nature themed background of this character, I think buttons will work nicely to contrast the more militaristic parts. So time to sift through the giant amount of buttons that I inherited from my grandma. And I found a few sets that might work. I have a slight feeling that sometimes you can tell whenever I'm nearing a sewing deadline. My room is an absolute mess. Anyways, after this the pockets can be sewn on. With the size of the pocket compared to the waistband, the placing might be a bit tricky since they also need a flap to close. But I think it should be able to fit. And that's it for these pockets for now. I'll leave actually sewing on the buttons for a chill late night. Figured this would be a good moment to sew the darts together, and after a good press, we can move on to the shoulder straps. For that, I quickly pinned one waistband piece to the rest of the pants, which means we can also get a first look at what the actual pants will look like. And I must say, I'm quite happy. So for these shoulder straps, I mean, all I have to do is throw this over my shoulder, see if I can get the pants up as high as they're going to be. Which, yes, it's going to be quite high. This will overlap a bit. This will overlap a bit. I think if I'm going to make straps of 80 centimeters in total, then I'll be fine. But I do want to make parts of these straps adjustable, so they'll have to be made double. But it doesn't have to be adjustable all the way. I think if we make the first 50 centimeters single layered, and then the last 30 double layered, I think that'll work out. Which means we can get to measuring and drawing. With how stretchy this fabric is, the tailor's chalk was a bit annoying to use, but I think it's still the best option here. And since we will need multiple straps of the same length, the next ones are a lot easier. We can just lay the fabric on top of each other and cut to the same size. And to make sure that the straps won't stretch, these will get interfacing on one of the sides as well. Then the two sides can be sewn together, finished with just the pinking shears, turn the right side out, and after a good press and some top stitching, we can start working on the attachments. And this is what a current test fit looks like. Again, this part is just pinned to the pants, just like this is pinned to this. I think I said it last time already, but yes, this really makes me happy, especially considering I made everything above here. I completely changed that compared to the original pattern. But also test fit still with a reason, because I do see some minor adjustments that I need to make. Mostly this adjustable band, as I already expected, is way too long. I want this clip to be more up here. So that means I'm probably gonna take 10 or 20 centimeters off this. And also in the back, I just pinned this somewhere and I think it will have to be a lot closer to the middle. Working in the mirror is difficult. I'm gonna put a ruler here. I'm gonna stand like this, and then I can use the footage to determine where I want the placement of it to go. Each strap consists of two parts. One gets a D-ring at the end, and the other the adjustable buckle. And now that we know what we want to do for the straps, it is time to start constructing the waistband itself. The straps with the buckle get pinned on the front of the waistband, and the straps with the D-ring go on the back. Except I realized I wanted them to be crossed. It's a small change, but one that was luckily caught before sewing them on. Then the other half of the waistband was put on top of this and sewn along the top edge, catching the straps between the two sides. A good iron later and this is what it looks like, but to make sure it stays down and flat nicely and doesn't actually fold open again, you want to top stitch below this edge. But I do realize I made it a bit difficult for myself, because where am I going to top stitch? Because if you're stitching below this edge, I don't want to stitch this down. So I think I'm going to be creative and open these up and stitch everything down below this stitch line. So let's do that. Next up, we can attach this mullet system, which can hold stuff like my medic pouch and other stuff that all has this same system. I already attached it once, and I'm going to walk you through how I attach the other side, because yes, as I expected, I had to rethink my ideas like 3 times, and I definitely stole some ideas from the original mullet system, because hey, like the Dutch idiom goes, better stolen well than horribly thought out. What I ended up doing was cutting a strip twice the length of what was needed, plus a little extra. And for sturdiness, fold it over and stitch it together. These were then pinned onto the waistband, stitched down with a zigzag at the edges, and then another stitch every 4 centimeters, so the mullet attachment bands could slip through. It seems so simple looking back on it now. And with this, all the accessories on the waistband are done, and we can start attaching it to the pants. To help the seams align, I first sewed the 2 halves together along the bottom edge inside the seam allowance, after which the seams could be lined up with the pants and attached together. And of course I only realized way too late that my bobbin had run out. Oh well, after rewinding it, time for a take 2. Because it is a relatively simple zipper, I pinned it in so we can do another test fit. And once again, yes, I am super happy with the way that this is turning out. However, I do see one thing that will need a bit of a change, and that is this. I think this is happening because we crossed the back straps, pulling this towards the back, and there is not a whole lot we can do about it at this moment without redoing everything, which I'm not gonna do. The only thing I think I can do is make it a slightly bit tighter in the front. Just this tiny bit tighter does make a bit of a difference. And then we can attach everything permanently. Then, last but not least, the bottom hems could be finished. This was done by double folding the edge and inserting some elastic. Since the pant legs are quite wide and I don't want them dragging on the floor and picking up mud, I measured how much would comfortably hang over the kinds of shoes I wear with these kind of costumes and adjusted the elastic to that. And with this, these LARP pants are done, which is right on time to go to an anime convention? Yes, this makes sense, because occasionally I help LARP platform run booths or activities at other events to promote the general LARP hobby. And this time, we did a first run at AnimeCon. It was an absolute blast, as I hadn't been to an anime convention in over 10 years. And it was really nice being back. So this was a great excuse to try out if I liked the new pants, by combining it with an old top from my Greylight Android costume. And well, doing a test run was a good idea, because while I loved the fit, I did rip the butt seam. After the AnimeCon weekend, there was no time to rest. There was only a week left until the LARP and I still had an entire top to make. And then I realized that I am a dum-dum in about 3 different ways. Because even though I had the fabric laying around for a while, I forgot to pre-wash it. And this is one of those fabrics that definitely needs to be pre-washed. After AnimeCon, I also realized I really liked the Greylight top that I was wearing. But that pattern needs a zipper. Luckily, I had one laying around that was similar enough. And lastly, I had intended to make a sleeveless version, but after wearing the Greylight top again, I changed my mind. Except that I didn't have enough fabric for sleeves. So I quickly ordered some more, and after the fabric that I did have was washed and dried, it was time to start with the rest. Hopefully the new fabric would arrive on time to add the sleeves. This, however, did give me time to fix the semi-ripped butt seam and reinforce it properly. So before even properly starting, I'm already realizing that this is going to be one of those projects where everything that will go wrong can go wrong. Because apart from everything that I already mentioned, I just discovered a giant mark in my fabric. I didn't notice it before, so I'm not sure if this happened while washing or if it was already there. So I moved the pieces of fabric around and I realized that there is no way that I'm going to be able to cut this top from the fabric without having the mark in there. So it's not a question on whether I can avoid the mark, but rather where do I want the mark? So I can fold the fabric on this side to cut the front, and then I guess the mark will end up on the back, which is already better, I guess. And yes, I'm fully aware that I could decide to scrap all of this and just wear the Greylight top like I did last weekend. But hey, I'm stubborn and I really want something green in my costume, so yeah, let's make this anyways. With some creative fabric folding and pattern layout, I think I managed to minimize how much of the mark ended up inside the pattern piece, and only on one half of the back. The nice thing about reusing the same pattern is that it goes a lot quicker, and whenever you aren't sure about something, you've always got an example to see how it was put together previously. With how stretchy this fabric is, I didn't trust myself to sew it neatly on the locker in one go. So all of the seams were first stitched on a regular sewing machine with a slight zigzag, after which the seams could be finished on the locker. One downside of this particular fabric is the stripes in it. They make it very obvious where all of the seams are, especially if they aren't straight. Which, as this is originally a dance leotard pattern, has quite a few of them, like the curved mid-back. But then again, I guess this is one of those in the category of I notice it because I am making it and I'm staring at it very up close, because others probably won't notice it at all. To see what kind of seam finish I like best, I made a small test piece. One with elastic single turned and one double turned. I think I prefer the single turned. It doesn't look all that different on the outside, but it is a lot less work to put in. So I ordered extra sleeve fabric on Monday. On Tuesday it said that the package would arrive Wednesday evening, and it's currently Thursday late in the afternoon, but I don't have sleeve fabric yet, and PostNL now says that they haven't received the package while the fabric store says it has been shipped. So yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get sleeve fabric before the event tomorrow. Which means that right now I guess I'm just gonna finish these armholes, hopefully in such a way that when the fabric arrives, probably after the event, I can still easily alter it to add the sleeves. But there is another thing, and that is that I redesigned this costume to work for very warm events, because that's what it was with the summer event in the last few years. However, this year it's a very comfy 20 degrees during the day, which means that at night it's probably colder and I kind of really need the sleeves. So I guess I'm lucky that this is a sci-fi event, and I'll just go through my closet, both my costume closet and my regular wear closet, to see if I have anything that fits this and actually has sleeves. Because this is a pattern with a cutout shoulder, we can finish the top half as is described in the pattern, which for now comes down to just the steps of cutting some elastic to size and zigzagging it on. Normally we'd now start making the sleeve and attaching it, so I think what I'm going to do is cut a bit of elastic to size for the lower half, attach it in the same way as the top half, fold everything over and then stitch it down with big stitches. And hand stitching is always best accompanied by putting on the playlist for the LARP character and singing along, just slightly out of tune. I think this is a good solution for now. Even though the stitches are in a different color, they aren't too distracting. And luckily I'm quite a fan of green. My daily wear closet has the perfect cardigan to wear with it for the colder evenings. And that was definitely needed. The evenings and mornings were still quite chilly. At the same time, I am pretty happy with this quick solution of no sleeves at all. The costume worked pretty well like this, and the event itself was a lot of fun as well. I mean, it's not often that I managed to make my character screw up so badly that they twice got the talk of, I am not just angry, but also disappointed. So yep, this was perfect. And guess what? The package with sleeve fabric arrived the evening after I had already left for the LARP. Well, it's not the worst for this costume. Let's just continue after the event. Because this is an upside of campaign LARPs. There will be another event in half a year, for which I'll need the same costume. The sleeves themselves didn't take long and they came together pretty quickly. To attach them, I just unpicked the temporary stitches so the whole armhole could be opened up again. Then the sleeves could be pinned to the armhole as usual, making sure that the ends of the elastic were overlapping for sturdiness. And with this, we're actually starting to near completion. However, when I finished the tops of the sleeves, I ended up having one new issue because my bobbin ran out. It's completely empty and the sizzle that's left on the spool. So we still have to finish both the armholes and then ideally also finish the bottom edges of the sleeves with this. No way that this is enough to rewind the bobbin. So I think I'm gonna do the thing with 2 different colors of thread and see if it's enough for that. Partially just to be sure, and partially to show it more clearly, I made a test piece with 2 very different thread colors. To make it look fancy, I made the stitch line on the armhole join up with the already existing stitch line on the sleeve, so it appears to be one continuous line. At least there was enough thread for this. So let's see if we also manage to finish the undersides of the sleeves with it. I decided not to add elastic here, just a simple double fold for the hem. And after neatly tucking away the last threads, we're done. This ended up being a rather chaotic project, especially with those extra deadlines in between. But all in all, I am very happy with the way that this turned out. It looks pretty much like the way I had imagined it, and it's very comfortable to wear as well. And all those pockets, 8 in total, plus the extra options with the molla, are very practical too. And that means that this is it for the summer version, and it's time to start thinking about what I want to do for the winter layers. For that, I have some interesting ideas as well. So you might want to stick around to see if they actually work. And with that, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.